Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
So it took me a really long time to realize this insane theory about the movie, Leave the Earth Behind. And all three of these things are connected in a very coincidental way, and it all makes sense. Did you notice two kids wearing t-shirts in one scene in the film? The boy had on an Obey t-shirt, and the other girl was wearing a NASA t-shirt. Obey and NASA, you know? Some folks claim that NASA is a code for Satan, but others argue saying, come on, NASA doesn't even spell that word. But guess what? NASA always begins their countdown with T-. It's like they deliberately left out the letter to finish the word. They seem to be teasing everyone by revealing it so obviously with the letter T missing, the same letter associated with the father of all lies. Now, let's shift gears to a mind-blowing discovery NASA recently made. A colossal hole in the sun known as the coronal hole. This hole is so massive it could swallow up 60 Earth-sized planets. What's even more alarming is that it's currently unleashing solar storms that have the potential to wipe out the internet for weeks, or possibly even months. And here's the real kicker. According to some reports, billionaires are going all out on bunkers. We're talking about big names like Beyonce and Jay-Z. Even tech moguls like Mark Zuckerberg are in on it, investing in bunkers to stay hidden. Zuckerberg has invested a staggering $270 million in a secret Hawaiian retreat, complete with an enormous underground bunker. Everyone involved, from the painters to the construction workers, must sign an NDA. This document ensures that whatever they testify or discuss inside remains a secret. I also heard that Jeff Bezos is working on his own underground bunker simultaneously. All these high-profile individuals are gearing up for something, even if the details aren't public knowledge. Maybe they are preparing for the revolution.
T minus that countdown, isn't that just time minus 5, 4, 3? I think that's what the T stands for in T minus. I don't trust NASA at all. I think that all they do is lie to us. I think it's just a big money laundering operation or theft, however you want to look at it. It could be some correlation there with the name, but I don't know. I think that's reaching a little bit.
It was very soon after that night that I woke up with a being in my face, in my bedroom, in that farmhouse, in that house. And I thought it was my dad my dad always did pranks.
Right.
And I thought he had a mask on. I said, Dad, take the mask off. You know, it's the middle of the night. And I reached up and touched it. And it just stood over me dead silent, a gray, your typical gray. And I touched it and it was cold and wet and very porous, like giant pores. And I went, ah! And then as soon as I reacted, I was paralyzed.
Yeah.
I couldn't move, and I could move my eyes, but I couldn't move. And then from there, I saw at the foot of my bed 2 or 3 more reptile-looking beings. I don't want to call them aliens, but they were ETs.
What did they look like?
They had hoods on. They were reptiles. They were probably 3 or 4 feet tall.
Oh, shorter.
They were short, and they came in and picked me up and carried me to the foot of my bed. There was a flash of light. I thought I was going out my window, but there was a flash of light, and it was kind of very disorienting. And then I remember being on a table. I was basically naked on a stainless steel kind of table, and it was a round room. I had bad vision back then. I've had laser surgery since. I had very nearsightedness. So I was in that room, and everything was blurry just because of I didn't have my glasses with me. And they ran some tests on me. They hit me here, and it was painful. And they said the short reptile was talking to me telepathically. It was telepathic.
Right.
And he said, we're going to run some tests on you. We want your help. And I thought it was first contact. I thought that here's our ETs are finally, I knew you guys were real. Finally, there are ETs. I'm going to prove that. I was going to be the kid that was going to go home and tell his parents there's ETs. And he said, we need to borrow his exact words were, we need to borrow your consciousness. You're going to help us. Do you want to help us? And I said, yes. And then the other said...
So you weren't scared at all? Afraid?
They were very, you know what, they went out of their way to be very, we're not going to hurt you.
Right.
Nothing bad's going to happen to you. We're going to put you back. You're going to be fine. I was afraid when I came to.
Sure.
And, but they were very, very, we're not going to do anything to hurt you. I said, this just hurt, you know. And, but they were very reassuring. So I thought that I was in good hands at that time. And you know, again, I was a kid. I'd never really been in anybody's bad hands before that. So I had no reason to be afraid. And he said, we're going to borrow your consciousness, and you're going to be gone for 20 years.
All right, The reason I threw this in is because I think it's fascinating that this guy, for one, just his account is fascinating to listen to. And you hear a lot of so-called abduction stories and stuff like that. But this dude's so serious about his, it made such a huge impact on his life. He's got it tattooed on him. If that doesn't lend some credibility to your story, it's going to be hard for you to convince anybody.
Genetics to say for that to happen in only 200,000 years is impossible. It should have taken millions of years to get black, white, Hispanic, all these different races, you know. And so what they realized was that this is an artificial mutation. I go back to the tablets again, my reference point, and I realized the reason why we have different races of people is because these beings were different races. Even one married one from a different planet. But what they did was they ruled over, say in India, a particular region of the planet, and they would genetically brand us to mark us. This shows up again in the Bible. We're genetically branded. Black people are not black. I'm not dark brown because my ancestors worked in the sun. That's stupid. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard.
There's sun in America. There's sun in China.
You know, that doesn't make any sense, the whole reasoning that they give us for the different skin tones and whatnot. I'm actually going through this book right now, Billy Carson's Emerald Tablets book. When I'm done with it, I actually thought I may do a full episode on just my thoughts of this. Throw in a few of his clips where he can explain things better than I'll be able to, and then just get a discussion going. So what are you guys' thoughts on that? Let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see a video like that. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, I make a new one just like it every single day. It would be awesome if you'd hit that subscribe button and come back tomorrow to join me.
It's real. The sun and the moon is real.
Okay.
But outer space is not.
Yeah, because there's no such thing as outer space.
No, that's the whole thing that got you tricked and why you think the other planets and stuff. The planets are wandering stars that you think about.
So you think all that, like them going to Mars stuff is all...
How they going to the Mars? Why they don't put the same rover on the moon so we can watch the Earth spin right now? How they gonna go to Mars?
We're talking about building a society on Mars, right?
Yeah. Why they doing that? Why they ain't got the same thing on the moon right now?
Yeah.
How they go stupid and we believe it?
It's just, it's so ingrained, you know? Because your parents were taught that, their parents were taught that. So if you go against...
No, our grandparents wasn't taught that.
Your great granddaddy
our grandparents and our great grandparents was taught that the Earth was flat before 1968.
I don't think so.
Look up, find an encyclopedia before 1968.
Dude,
I know when I first came across the flat Earth stuff, I didn't believe in it and stuff, and I was trying to debunk it and everything. The thing that threw me off was they were talking about how fast the Earth spins at 666, everything's 666 and stuff like that, and making it sound like so evil. And that's the thing that threw me off. I'm like, you know, that's too much of a conspiracy. Like, I know people can be smart and stuff and can be evil. I know how evil this world is because I'm a very spiritual person.
Yeah.
And I know the true meaning. I know the true reason why they're lying. I do. But that stuff that's what threw me off about the whole flat Earth, and I didn't believe it. The only way I believed it, I came across the emergency landings thing. That's when I was like, yeah.
I'll look into it.
And just for clarification, for those of you who aren't aware, the reason for why they would be lying about a flat Earth that's given by flat earthers is that if they could prove that the Earth was flat, it would prove the existence of a God, because according to the Bible, the Earth is flat and has a dome over it. And I would say that yes, if we came out with undeniable definitive proof tomorrow that the Earth is flat, it would at the very least be proof to a good deal of people that God exists, and they don't want that.
Have you guys ever heard of this book? You probably haven't, because you can't even find a physical copy. You can only find it online or in audio. Basically, it is exactly what the title states, 16 emergency landings. So this is a flight to Sydney to Rio, and an emergency happened along the way, so they chose way up here in Los Angeles to stop. Now, why would they go out of their way all the way up here to Los Angeles when it would have been a lot easier just to go all the way to Rio? Well, you see, because Los Angeles is right on the way. You see this on the flat Earth map. Los Angeles is on its way to Rio. Okay, here's another one. From Taiwan to Los Angeles. Emergency happened along the way, so they decided to stop way up here in Alaska. Well, that's because Alaska is right on the way. From Taiwan to Los Angeles. Boom, Alaska. Not to mention, have you ever noticed all these major corporations in the world have a flat Earth logo or flag? Like the one that's most famous, the United Nations. Like, come on people, do y'all not see this? You think all this is just to be funny? Absolutely not. It's the truth. But anyways, please like and follow, share this, tag someone down below that needs to see this, and see you on the next one. Peace.
I'm not a flat earther, but this right here confuses the hell out of me. I've never seen anyone explain all these strange flight paths, all these strange flight patterns and stuff. I've never seen anyone who proposes that the Earth is a globe or a ball explain why we have such strange flight patterns that only match up on a flat Earth.
Witnesses went on the record to say they did not look like our archetypal gray with the big black eyes. In fact, one of them said they look like us, but smaller. He said they were kind of nice. They weren't bad looking. They were kind of nice looking little guys. And when you see this, like, that's kind of the image that I always had, and that's what we're looking at here.
Go back to that other image again. Yeah. Again, look at this left eye here and the little indentation there. When you see a cadaver, one of the things that happens after death, and what morticians will do, people don't realize this, I hope I'm not grossing anybody out, but they actually, it's like a lens that they put underneath the eyelid to make the eyelids look natural in death. Because what happens is the body dehydrates and the eyes sink in, and you get like these little indentations like this here. And I go on like, that's not something you sculpt in. You don't sculpt like that. You would make it, biometrically symmetrical. And you never sculpt a subject with the eyes closed in death. Why would you do that? You're trying to portray
Right,
this
exactly. What a good point.
Yeah. So why would you do the eyes closed? So immediately I thought, okay, that's where they got this. This was a life cast, of one of these, or a death mask of one of these aliens, and they needed something. They had a treasure trove of stuff. I've heard so often times. I've heard it from the Tsar. I've heard it from what's his name with the NATO who just passed away. He was a member of APRO.
Bob Dean.
Bob Dean.
Yeah.
He said he saw pictures of dead aliens in the UN files, and I'm going like, they have a treasure trove of this stuff, and they needed something for the press release for that museum. This is interesting. We don't have the Betty Barney Hill sculpts yet. We'll use this. And they started, because no one knew what it was or where it came from. So yeah, we used it.
I want to back up. So Jim Lorenzen's telling you they're going to take this museum and they're going to put it on the train like they did on the bicentennial, and they're going to go across the country, this massive exhibit to demonstrate the reality of the UFO subject and of aliens, and it's going to include alien bodies.
That's pretty convincing. Of course, that could be manufactured anywhere, but his little detail there about how the eyes sink in, and this appears to show that. That's pretty fascinating. I like that.
Some of the gods of the Indian texts, they're blue, not because they were saying it was a metaphor or that it was a coincidence. So no, these were blue people. Their skin had a bluish haze to it, or a bluish tint to it. These were part of the Anunnaki people, proving that it wasn't just one specific race of people. Some of these people were black or dark-skinned, right? They even call them some black-faced in the Sumerian tablets. Some of these beings were Anunnaki, but they had African features, but they were fair-skinned with blonde hair and blue eyes. So it's almost like a person that maybe is like a mulatto or has that, as an albino, or maybe that's where the gene comes from. Who knows? And then you had people that were also resembled Caucasians and that were giants with red hair. And then you had, of course, you have the red man, which is coming out of the indigenous stories from the Lakota, the Hopi, and all these other tribes out of the Americas, these giants. And then, and no matter where you go, you find the same story. You find a particular type of a being ruling over people that kind of resemble them. Now, this is interesting. I started looking into this.
One thing that I find interesting is all these various depictions of giants that are, that span the entirety of the planet. They almost always have that detail of 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot, and red hair. I just find that particular detail to be quite fascinating, because as into this type of stuff as I am, not have that knowledge until relatively recently, the knowledge of all these sightings, and then to to know that other people who aren't into this stuff are the ones, claiming to have witnessed these things, and they're giving out this detail that they wouldn't know to give out if they just were making up a story about a giant creature or a giant person. So I think that right there is fascinating.
I want you to picture it, okay? You're in New York, Times Square, 1951 in June. All of a sudden, a man appears. But the thing is like he was so out of place. Like he did not look like he belonged there. And honestly, nobody saw him walk up. So they didn't know how he even got there. He also did not know how he got there. They said that his body language was just like you could tell something was off. And there were cars driving around him and they were terrifying him. He had no idea what was going on. He ends up actually getting hit by one of these cars and he is seriously injured and he just collapses. By the time people got to him, he was already gone. But once the police get there and they realize it's not just his clothes that look out of date, they find something in this man's pockets that scared them all to death. He had several coins and bills that were no longer in circulation from several decades in the past. He had a bill from the livery stable and a brass slug from a saloon, a letter that was postmarked 1876, and business cards that had the name Rudolph Fence with an address on Fifth Avenue. But the scary thing about this is everything that they found in his pockets were in mint condition. So Captain Hubert V. Ream is like, I'm going to handle this. I'm going to go see what this is. So he goes to the address that is on the business card. And there was an office, but nobody knew who this Rudolph was. So he checked the address book. He checked the phone book. He couldn't find anything. He didn't give up though. So this was 1951, right? So he continues to go back, and he finds an address book from 1939. And he finds a Rudolph Fence, but it's a junior. Unfortunately, by the time they figure out who this is, they also figure out that the junior has passed away. But his wife is still alive and is living in Florida. What they find out from Rudolph's wife in Florida shocked everybody. She said that in 1876, Rudolph's dad, Rudolph Sr., went missing. Hubert goes and looks at the missing person reports from 1876, and lo and behold, there he is. The description of the man who went missing in 1876 matched the man who appeared in Times Square in 1951 exactly. According to Rudolph Jr.'s wife, she said that she had been told her father-in-law went out for a walk one night around 10 p.m. and never came back. And many believe that's because he appeared in Times Square at 11:15. So do you believe in time travel?
I'm curious to know if this has been verified, because it sounds like it's a very well written out sci-fi story. Of course, it could be that all of these details are real and this guy is just claiming to be someone else and he's not who he says he is. Interesting nonetheless. I'm just curious if any of these details have ever been verified, or if it's just a confirmation bias. Like everyone just keeps referencing the same made-up story to get these same details over and over again.
What are they hiding in Antarctica? In old maps, Antarctica is referred to as Terra Austras, which means land of the south. Nowhere does it show or mention ice. The most intriguing thing is that all maps show Antarctica connected to South America, meaning people could literally walk over to Antarctica. Yet scientists say that Antarctica was only connected 600 million years ago. Something just doesn't add up. In 1961, governments signed a treaty to say nobody can go to Antarctica. Recent speculation has created much debate over whether Antarctica was home to a lost ancient civilization before it became the icy continent we know today. Scientists have drilled down into the ice and found evidence that Antarctica was once a lush rainforest, and have even found 1 million-year-old DNA. What else could be hidden underneath the ice? Subscribe for our next video where we will uncover more secrets under the ice of Antarctica.
I think it's within the realm of possibility that 1,000 years ago, just to give a nice even round number, that there was not ice all over Antarctica, or at least close to that time. I know that science claims that, it's been 9 miles deep or however many miles deep of ice for, tens of thousands of years or longer. But if all these old maps show that there's palm trees and animals and all this stuff there, even if they're referencing other older source maps, those guys had to, somewhere down the line, somebody witnessed these things. And it was somebody from our day, within our current history. It wasn't that someone found a map of Antarctica that predated the Younger Dryas incident. It just really makes me think, like, how long has it been covered in ice? Or did they discover a different part of Antarctica that's still not covered in ice?
When the Roman Empire was collapsing, there was a man named Constantine. And Constantine ended up having this brilliant idea where they would restructure the Roman Empire. He's like, okay, so how do we control everything? And they were like, well, if we rewrite history, we can write the future too, because who controls the past controls the future. And then they also realized, well, we can't really have people like reaching higher states of consciousness through spirituality and through these teachings, so let's also take over religion. People don't know is that the Roman Empire used to be a non-monotheistic civilization, meaning that they didn't believe in a single god. And what they did was they then turned into a monotheistic religion. And instead, then they started like persecuting anyone that wasn't a Christian, remember? But then what they did was interesting, is then they burned the Library of Alexandria. And then what they did is they went around the world and systematically destroyed all the ancient groups that were pre-Christian, such as the Gnostics. That's the entire reason why the Dogon ended up in Mali. Because Egypt was under religious persecution from not only the Romans, but other groups. And so the Roman Empire, the Crusades, but the Christian Empire, was not about just converting people to Christianity, but it was about literally destroying any echoes of the past.
They're still trying to destroy our past right now and hide things from us, which is why we're here watching these videos. I'm about 90% sure that all of these Mandela effect things are just a government psyop, trying to see what they can make us believe. Trying to see if they can lie right to our faces about things that they know that we've seen with our own eyes, and if we're going to buy into it.
The giants that were in the Americas. 1520, Italian scholar Antonio Pigafetta. He was traveling with Ferdinand Magellan, who was the first to try to circumnavigate the world. And so they were going around the tip of South America, and a storm blew in, and they had to run aground and stuff and wait out the storm. But for 2 weeks, they didn't see any humans whatsoever. And then one day they were on like one of their little boats going around different parts of the coast, and they said they saw this giant man on the beach who was butt naked. It was super weird. And they came across him, and it startled the giant. He was like afraid of them. Yeah. The giant kept on pointing to them and pointing up, like basically you came from up there. So the giant led them into his village, and everyone saw them, and they started celebrating and dancing and singing and pointing to them and pointing up like, you've come back. Patagonia means place of big feet.
Wow.
Really? Yeah, pata, I think in Spanish, means foot, and the Patagonia together means place of big feet. So we named the giants Patagonians.
Wow.
Interesting.
Do we have any Spanish-speaking audience members? I'm curious if that's really what Patagonia means. And also, if this stuff's documented, how come no one's gone back after all this time to see if that tribe is still there?
This is an actual eclipse. I filmed it. There happened to be a lot of haziness in the sky, so it was really easy to film without any glare. And this is an eclipse that's going on. It went to like 85%, right? This is a model eclipse where I have a light on the other side, and I'm projecting it, and I'm blocking the light with a round object. And I'll show you how that's done in a second, right? So this is an eclipse that was filmed prior to that, and we saw this. What is this? It's locked to position with the sun. This is a lens flare. It's moving around as we move the camera. But this is staying in perfect sync with the sun. Now, this was happening, there was like a 90% eclipse at this time. The reason you don't see it here is just because it's so bright, but if you look with sunglasses, you would see that this eclipse is just about that much. But what is this eclipse here? And if it was a lens flare, it would be moving around, but it's not. So I say that the sun that we see is not the actual source of the sun. It's a projection. It's like we're seeing a rear projection on our sky screen, just like my experiment here. The paper towel is the sky screen, and I have the rear projector, which is here. This is the source of the sun, and I'm eclipsing it with a dark body. Now, I don't see that dark body coming in here. I only see the missing sun. I don't see that dark body because there's no light coming off of that dark body. It's just blocking the light. I don't see it. I don't see it exit. And so I did it again with a thinner tissue, and as I bring it in, we see it right here. There's the source. I'm seeing through the sheet. I'm not being blinded by the bright sun, and I'm blocking the source. And that's exactly what we see. And when we compare it to what reality actually showed us, it looks pretty damn close. Right? You're muted.
It just opens your eyes to everything. It makes everything make sense, and it makes you question everything.
I was kind of following what he was saying there at first, but then he lost me whenever he got to the diffusion element. So if you've got that tissue there, and that's what you're seeing, the source through the tissue, and that's what that small curvature is next to the eclipse, then wouldn't that mean that the source of the sun, the actual sun, is actually behind the projected image that we're looking at? And he's making the claim that we're seeing the reflection coming off of the dome. So wouldn't that mean that the sun is still out in space? This is what I don't get about the flat earth thing. There's too many different claims. So is the sun and moon inside this dome, or are they outside of it and we're just seeing a projection of them? And if they are outside of it, then how is space not real? Doesn't make sense.
We're living in a multi-dimensional universe, and there's at least 11 dimensions. Otherwise, the universe would collapse. Each dimension is a 90-degree angle right above the next one, compactified. So they're sitting right on top of us. So within less than a Planck unit of space above you, there's another dimension that actually exists with a whole nother universe happening simultaneously while we're sitting right here. And from higher dimensions, time really doesn't exist. The past, present, and the future happen all at once. We even know now that some of our synapses of our thoughts in our brain phase out of this dimension and they go somewhere else, and then they come back again. The universe is most likely the shadow of a higher dimension. So we discovered that we're living in a programmed light matrix. It doesn't mean we're not real. It just means that there is a creator or creators. Consciousness isn't made inside this avatar body, that the avatar body doesn't even exist. That consciousness is a stream of something coming from somewhere else and is being picked up in this matrix with this coding.
So he's claiming this is proof that there must be some sort of a creator. I'll ask you this. How does it make any sense whatsoever at all that we even exist? How is anything here? It would have had to have always been here. That's not, in my mind, if there is no beginning and there is no end, time is not linear, that's just the way that we perceive it, then everything's always existed just like it is existing right now. Maybe in different states, but not in the sense that everything was compressed down into small little, a Volkswagen Beetle sized ball of energy that exploded and created everything. Doesn't make any sense. Where did that ball of energy come from? How long was it sitting there doing nothing before it exploded? Before it was created, what happened? What was in existence? Because you can't make something from nothing. So just that simple question: how do we exist? How is it possible that we even exist? Just that question on its own is enough to break my brain.
What shouldn't be in coal but is actually there?
Lots of things. Carbon-14 is one thing that shouldn't be in coal. It should have all decayed away within 50, 100,000 years, and yet coal is supposed to be millions of years old and it's found there. We find that there's tree trunks which are scattered in the coal in different places, different types of coal, and the tree trunks are well preserved. Some of them poke right through the coal, and they shouldn't be doing that if they're there. Methane gas is something which we find in coal. It shouldn't be there. It should have all escaped, but it's preserved. Also, one amazing thing is in some coal deposits in Australia, you find layers of pollen. It shouldn't be there if it accumulated slowly over millions of years.
This just tells me, just reaffirms to me that we are way off when it comes to carbon dating and don't know as much as we claim to know. Just the simple statement of, oh, it takes X amount of years for coal to form, but then it's got all this stuff that would completely dissipate if it were in coal for that amount of time, and it's still present. It's just another good example to show you that science is making a bunch of shit up and they don't really know what they're talking about half the time. Guys, that's the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed these clips. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. I hope you come back to see me. But until then, have a great, safe, fantastic day. I will see you tomorrow.